So namaste, good evening everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara meditation program. And with all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. And we're going to be doing kind of a reading contemplation this evening. So we'll start with the opening mantras. And if you've downloaded them, chant along with us. And when we're chanting these mantras and listening to the mantras, if you just want to listen, it's, as I often remind people, listen with other than just the physical ear. You know, the root power of mantra is consciousness. It's a throb of consciousness. In fact, that same throb of consciousness begins as a throb of light. And so there are forms from that same essential nature of consciousness that then emerge as visual forms. That's a yantra, like the yantra here. When that light transforms into the throb, the pulsation that we know is sound, then that's the divine form of mantra. So when we're chanting mantras, we're literally surrounding ourselves, infusing ourselves with a divine form, with that throb, that vibration of consciousnesses. We're all one. This is all there is. We're all one. And these mantras that we start with are a way of invoking that awareness. So we can set aside the ordinary mind, set aside the day, the week, whatever, and come into the full presence of our own being. It's an invocation of your own highest nature. It's an invocation that you are the divine. And so in that sense, that awareness of I am that, the Hamsa awareness, we carry that understanding, even whatever the mantra we might be chanting, the root of that is I am that. I am that throb of the infinite. I am that pulse of the divine. And that's your nature and everything about you. So we use mantra as a way of coming back to the direct knowing of that, the direct conscious awareness of that. So we'll start with the opening mantras. Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai Gajananam Bhuta Ganari Sevitam Kapita Jambu Palacharu Bhakshanam Umasutam Shokam Vinashakarakam Namami Vigneshwara Parapankajam Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti 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 Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai. And so mantra brings us back to the stillness, the spaciousness of awareness, that pure awareness, that pure consciousness, unmoved by movements of the mind, the living presence of yourself, of the awareness of I am that. So namaste. So once again, I welcome you all to our program tonight. So good to have you all with us. And tonight is going to be a reading that I'm going to do. And it's from a great book on extraordinary saint, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And this work is called The Great Swan, in case you don't have that in your library. It was written by a wonderful author who was really an extraordinary being himself. Lex Hickson passed away several years ago, and was known as a sage in a number of different traditions and really revered for that. So he's an extraordinary teacher, scholar, and really an embodiment of that knowledge himself. And so who better to write about this amazing saint of the non-dualist tradition called Advaita Vedanta. And Advaita means non-dual. Vedanta is the wisdom from the end of the Upanishads, the Vedas. And Ramakrishna was a 19th century saint in India who was an extraordinary, both a devotee of Ma Kali, so particularly close to my heart, and through that and through his teachings, also a really brilliant and of non-dual awareness of Advaita Vedanta, of that direct experience that is really the goal of all different sadhanas, all different practices from all different traditions. And he was one who embraced all traditions. He didn't just say, oh, it should be Hindu, it should be yogis, it should be Buddhas. The highest truth is revealed over and over again in the depths of these traditions. He embodied that, he taught that. And so you'll get a flavor of that from this reading tonight, and something you might want to follow up on and read this for yourselves. So I'm going to start with this, and it's Mahatma Gandhi wrote, Ramakrishna's life enables us to see God face to face. That's how powerful his living presence was and continues to be through his writings. So this is the preface by Lex Hickson. It says an introduction. By meeting Ramakrishna, which is possible here and now, we enter a unique realm of experience where the wisdom goddess remains. That's Ma Kali. The one Ramakrishna calls my blissful mother. The wonderful nature of this realm cannot be analyzed, yet it describes itself. The present volume contains that mysterious description, not only in words that are merely instruments, but in the living presence of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the great swan, the God-intoxicated sage of Bengal. So we are peacefully gathered together beyond the reach of philosophy or theology, here in the sage's room at the Dakshineshwar temple garden, beside the sacred river of Ganges. And joyfully we contemplate and participate in his adventuresome life in animated conversations. The details are concrete, cultural, earthy, yet they achieve the impossible. They transmit the experience of supreme reality. The pages of this book, as well as the actual historical conversation and events they depict, are part of the timeless current that embodied itself in India from 1836 to 1886 as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Whatever our background may be, we can swim in this refreshing, surprising current of love and wisdom to be awakened and renewed. This is not a conventional biography, but a workbook in a sense. Ramakrishna comes along with these pages to work side by side with us, clarifying our general understanding of religion, as well as initiating and intensifying our particular experience of the mystic path. Ramakrishna laughs and weeps with us. He leads us into ecstasy. This book will be useful to every seeker of truth along the way, because Paramahamsa accepts and merges with every authentic sacred tradition. The atmosphere that surrounds the sage is intensely Indian, completely non-European, and yet Ramakrishna mysteriously provides a master key that opens all cultures and all hearts. So now we have Ramakrishna's words. Ramakrishna said, "The sensitive mother presents various preparations of fish to her hungry children, some plain and bland or rich and spicy, depending on their tastes and their powers of digestion. Just so, the Mother of the Universe reveals various spiritual practices. This child enjoys every one of her delicious dishes without exception. Whether you follow the ideal of a personal God or the impersonal truth, you will certainly realize the one reality, provided that you experience profound longing. The same cake tastes sweet from every direction. So place your devotion wholeheartedly at the service of the ideal most natural to your being, but know with unwavering certainty that all spiritual ideals are expressions of the same supreme presence. Do not allow the slightest trace of malice to enter your mind toward any manifestation of God or toward any practitioner who attempts to live in harmony with that divine manifestation. Kali, Krishna, Buddha, Christ, Allah. These are all full expressions of the same indivisible consciousness and bliss. These are revelatory initiatives of divine reality, not man-made notions. Blessed is the soul who has known that all is one, that all jackals howl essentially alike. The ecstatic lover has burning faith in every divine manifestation, as formless radiance, as various forms or attributes, as divine incarnations like Ram and Krishna, or as the goddess of wisdom, Ma Kali, who is beyond form and formlessness, containing both in her mystic womb. Meet as many adepts from various paths as you can. Love these persons, receive their initiations, and passionately practice their disciplines. But enter your own inner chamber of primordial awareness to enjoy selfless peace and delight. Everyone will attain God consciousness and be liberated. Some receive their meal early in the morning, others at noon, still others not until evening. But none will go hungry. Without exception, all living beings will eventually know their own true nature to be timeless awareness. So the author writes, Ramakrishna is the Paramahamsa, the great swan, who can separate out the milk of truth, which has become diluted with the water of personal and cultural habits, opinions, and conventions. As the blissful sage proclaims, some persons have heard about milk, others have seen milk, while others have actually tasted milk, and still others can drink milk whenever they wish and offer it freely to humankind. So may we ascend together through these 4 levels of maturity, described so simply by the God-intoxicated child of Bengal, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So in this chapter, the Master is expounding Advaita Vedanta, that non-dualistic wisdom of the Vedas. A lazy hot afternoon in late August, Paramahamsa is napping in his surprisingly breezy room after the noon meal, cooked deliciously and served gracefully by his beloved Sarada. Our Master describes his mystical relationship with his wife as the intrinsic union between fire and its power to burn, or between milk and its lovely whiteness. These 2 persons are simply not 2, except in conventional thought and perception. The ceremonial offering of the 16 traditional articles in the shrines of Radhakrishna and Mahakali, accompanied by Sanskrit chanting, the ringing of gongs, are now completed. Dakshineshwar garden is silent, save for the continuous praise of the birds and the ceaseless mantra murmured by the sacred Ganges River. Doors to the places of formal worship are closed, and the divine images are enjoying their traditional period of rest. This unveils a mysterious sense of purna, fullness or completeness, a sense of pure presence, pervading all phenomena in a natural, spontaneous manner. As the ancient sages of the Upanishads teach, completeness manifests from completeness and returns again into completeness. Ramakrishna opens his eyes, sits up on his low bed, and begins to speak about the exalted insights of Vedanta, the culmination of the primeval Vedic wisdom of India. The Vedas expound the science of cosmic communion with gods, cosmic harmony, and the heavenly journey of the soul, achieved through powerful rites and awakened mantras, which reveal to the rishis, their seers of truth. Vedanta, the dimension of transcendent insight, lies far beyond the sphere of ritual worship, leaving behind the notions of an objective cosmos and an individual soul. This realm, Om Tat Sat, of sheer transparency, can never be touched by body, speech, or mind. Vedanta shines forth when all shrines are sealed, when all worship is stilled, when divine forms and human forms are at perfect rest. As Ramakrishna often remarks, only reality can know reality. We place our foreheads on the fragrant floor of the Master's room, prostrating with awe before this rishi of our present age, who so clearly manifests the stature of a world teacher, by once again bringing spiritual science to its culmination at Vedanta. Yet this leader of humanity dresses like a simple villager. In fact, just yesterday, a new visitor encountered our Master strolling through the rose garden, carefully examining the blossoms, and mistook him for one of the temple gardeners. The Calcutta gentleman called peremptorily to the Paramahamsa to pick up a rose, and bruising his tender fingers, the selfless sage quickly and quietly complied. We now observe Ramakrishna as he enters the spiritual mood of a teacher. The child of the Divine Mother mysteriously disappears, and we encounter the lion's roar of a fully awakened Buddha. We are deeply grateful for this opportunity to receive the transmission of Vedanta directly from the source of wisdom, through the beautiful bearded lips and sweet speech of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He usually presents this radical teaching only to the most intimate of his inner circle, but today the Wisdom Mother is opening this dimensionless dimension for anyone who happens to be present, visiting from Calcutta on their Sunday holiday. Ramakrishna speaks. He says, the objectless, subjectless insight into the essential nature of consciousness, or Atmayana, is radically investigated and unfolded only by a small group of Vedantic scriptures, such as the Ashtavakra Samhita. Not many seekers will be drawn to this most uncompromising discipline of direct knowing. Persons qualified for this path of knowledge feel completely comfortable and joyful in renouncing all notions of separate, substantial self-existence. They are the true proponents of Advaita, non-duality, because they genuinely understand that they do not exist apart from supreme reality. The knower and the known are simply not two. Reality alone shines, neither two nor even one, beyond description or calculation. Your very life breath must become the conscious, timeless affirmation of reality by reality. Soham, Soham. It's another form of the mantra Hamsa. I am that. I am that. That is I. Only the dualistic imagination perceives some separate practitioner who makes the primordial affirmation Soham. To lose completely any notion of separate self, no matter how subtle or instinctive, is the true definition of sannyas, the blessed life of renunciation. Non-duality is renunciation. As long as one imagines oneself to exist independently as initiator or recipient of various actions, either as actor, agent, subject, or object of any kind, then one has not completely renounced. The actual state of non-dual knowledge is comparable to falling from a high tree, remaining clearly aware without tensing a single muscle or feeling the slightest anxiety. This level of renunciation is usually considered more appropriate for wandering sages or monastic practitioners than for men and women with family and social responsibilities. As long as one holds exclusively to the personal view, such as my responsibility, I must perform it because if I do not take the initiative, it will never get done. If one holds that, one is not prepared to engage in Advaita Vedanta. One may entertain the teaching intellectually, but will fail to embody transcendent insight directly. Nonetheless, regardless of differences in the capacity to understand, the same truth holds for every conscious being. There never is any duality. Never. The principle of awareness, Atman, never engages in activity, although from this pure principle alone, the luminous, transparent, insubstantial universe spontaneously unfolds. When the practitioner is consciously identified, not with any expression of awareness, but with the living principle of awareness itself, breathing Soham, Soham, I am that, there remains no sense of intrinsic involvement with polarities such as good and evil, virtue or vice, self and other, existence and non-existence. However, when one identifies with activity rather than with the principle of awareness, manifesting an ego that claims to generate various chains of events, then the tensions between polar opposites split that person's consciousness, creating various forms of obvious and subtle suffering. The thick smoke from an open fire blackens the wall behind it, but it does not affect the very principle of empty space, which permits the fire to burn in the first place. My dear friend, Krishna Kishore, a radical Vedantist, on fire with the most intense renunciation, affirms with total conviction and authenticity, I am the principle of empty space within which and by which all phenomena transparently manifest. This great practitioner is not a monk. He attends skillfully to his social and family responsibilities in the same effective way that space permits various phenomena to be displayed. This is an advanced level of realization, an inward sannyasa, not a mere intellectual position that any student of the Ashtavakra Samhita might claim. See, once one has received the initiatory transmission of Advaita Vedanta from an illumined sage, not simply from a textbook, it becomes fruitful to practice this radical attitude that one is free from individuality, free from particularity, free from any imaginable limits. One can sense when this attitude is approaching true Atmayana, omniscience, conscious knowing, without any veils of knower and known, beyond mere playing with words and intellectual posturing. How? Just as one distinguishes easily between a ripe mango and a green mango. So you should ceaselessly affirm with every breath, with every heartbeat, every action, every intention, I am freedom from every limitation. I am the principle of timeless awareness. The function of conventional consciousness in the personal sphere, the social sphere, the religious sphere, is to proclaim various limits, barriers, partitions, distinctions, definitions, frontiers, and then to submit to these abstractions, gradually becoming entirely enslaved by them. In effect, one is constantly repeating, consciously or unconsciously, I am not free. I am bound up in all these categories of thought and perception. The conditioned person obsessively and even instinctively repeats, I am worthless, I am superficial, I am incapable of transcendent insight, I am irrevocably immersed in family, career, political concerns. This is not a mere verbal repetition, but a routine ritual invocation of limited existence by the entire body and mind of the falsely isolated individual consciousness. This state of illusory bondage becomes increasingly vivid and convincing. So you should choose. Choose instead to affirm with your whole being, I know that supreme reality alone exists. This transcendent knowing is itself simply that reality. How can such a non-dualistic awareness ever become limited by notions such as bondage, impurity, or imperfection? Now the Master is presenting this revolutionary teaching of Advaita with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her cubs. He refuses to permit us to be stolen away by the delusion of duality. Adamantine conviction streams from his blazing heart, brilliant as the noonday sun, igniting our hearts with the ancient Vedantic transmission, the permission to practice this heroic attitude, this renunciation of every context whatsoever. Yet, at the very peak of this revelation, the demeanor of this mysterious Paramahamsa is undergoing an astonishing change. Right before our eyes, he is once more becoming childlike and vulnerable. The manifestation of invincible power is disappearing, and complete powerlessness is now unveiled, a naked, simple, humble humanity. We sense this change of spiritual mood in our own bodies, almost like a slight nausea, as if the sage is pulling us back suddenly into our own conventional level of experience in order to examine it more clearly in the light of transcendent insight. Ramakrishna says, "Oh, I am severely depressed today. My dear nephew, Hriday, has written that he is dangerously ill. All morning I have been questioning, oh mind, why are you so miserable about Hriday's situation? Is it Maya or Daya? Delusion or true compassion?" This is the inquiry that every practitioner must engage in moment by moment. Maya is the enslavement to dualistic abstractions. Daya is the beautiful functioning of non-dual wisdom energy in the form of tenderness, empathy and compassion and affection. Please tell me, Mahendra, is my dejected mood an expression of dualistic projection and egocentric construction? Or is it unbearable compassion for all beings, the great compassion born spontaneously from the womb of the Wisdom Mother? Well, the most reticent among our Master's companions cannot find a single word to reply. There are unshed tears glistening in Mahendra's eyes. And perceiving the dilemma of his beloved disciple, Paramahamsa laughs tenderly and speaks in tones of great kindness. Oh, Ramakrishna says, "My dear, you know very well how the power of Maya, the delusive sense of isolated individual existence, most often expresses itself as obsessive concern, not only for oneself, but for the joys and sorrows of one's closest friends and relatives. Whereas Daya, the selfless love and compassion shining from non-dual wisdom, expresses itself as an even-handed concern for the physical well-being and the spiritual evolution of all persons, all precious living creatures, all forms manifested by pure consciousness. Now answer the question, is my depression over Hriday's drastic condition an expression of Maya or Daya? Well, again, Mahendra is speechless. We all know how much Hriday bothered and even tormented Ramakrishna over the years. Yet this awakened sage, liberated from all conventional limits, is now more intensely concerned than a mother over Hriday's welfare. The Paramahamsa even experiences the pain of illness in his own body, identifying totally with his nephew's misery. Well, Mahendra's unspoken attitude is shared inwardly by all of us privileged to be here in the presence of Ramakrishna, who is sheer, non-dual wisdom, and who flows ceaselessly as the most tender compassion for all beings without exception. If our hearts possessed the voices, they would cry out in unison at this poignant moment, O beloved guide, O Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, may the delusive power of Maya be utterly extinguished in our own being, and may the transforming power of Daya flow through us as our very life breath, just as it flows through your holy person. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the great sage, the great Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa is a kind of a title, honorific, that's often used to describe great sages, because a Paramahamsa refers to this mythic great swan, and it's that great swan who is able to drink the milk from water that was mixed with milk and just drink out the milk. So it's that discriminating awareness that can extract the presence of the truth, the fullness of that living consciousness that is pure awareness, within which all of this, all the ephemeral things in our minds as well as in the world arise and subside, but still we can hold that awareness of that limitless consciousness that embraces all with that loving, boundless compassion, wisdom, grace. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was an embodiment of that. And he extolled the greatness of all the different traditions in that unity awareness, that that's the root of all wisdom, all knowledge across traditions. And it's particularly expressed in mantra. And mantra, when it's done with that awareness of Hamsa or Soham, I am that. I am that boundless awareness. I am that boundless consciousness. Because the ordinary mind is going about, as he described, and countless other sages have as well, all through the day going, I'm just this, I'm just that, I can only have this, I don't have that, I wish I had this other thing, I wish I could get rid of that thing. All the time, repeating, in a sense, mantras of limitation, mantras of avidya, of ignorance, of being identified with something bound and limited. And so the meditation practices we do are all aimed at expanding us beyond that. Because it's that ignorance that gives birth to all the suffering. It's that ignorance of the fullness, the purnoham vimarsha, Om Purnamada Purnamidam. We're invoking the fullness. That's the fullness of that pure consciousness, lacking nothing, lacking nothing. Think of all the things that are happening in our world today based on people's sense of lack and want, and then going about trying to get it any way they can, to hoard it, to exploit, to do whatever they can, to hold on to things. All at root, these are reflections of ignorance of their own self, ignorance of our own fullness, ignorance of the truth of who we are. So to get past that, we have to do the practices. To get past that, even for a moment, is so refreshing to the mind, the spirit, that it gives us the strength then to go into the world and become a light a light of that knowing, a light of that awareness, a light of that truth, to help others become free of it. So first we might learn that, as Ramakrishna was saying, that milk exists, and then maybe we see milk, and then maybe we taste the milk. But ultimately we want to have access to the milk all the time and be able to give it to all beings. Just give that pure awareness. You are the divine. You are the one. You have that fullness. That is the pure nature of your being. So meditation and the practices, the mantra, they're all about coming home to the truth of who we are. Regardless of the tradition we might be doing, we're doing it with that refined awareness, that true knowing that we are that source. We are Buddha. We are Kali. We are Krishna. We are Tara. We are Allah. We are Christ consciousness. We are the divine. Nothing left out. That's what we're coming home to. That's what this is all about. That's what it is to keep the company of truth. Satsang. To keep the company of the truth. The truth of who you are. We come together to delight in the company of the truth. You're that truth. You're that embodiment. You're that living presence. Become grounded in that. Become unshakable in that. So you walk that into the world, moment by moment. You breathe that into the world. Every breath. Hamsa, I am that. Breathe that wisdom, that knowledge into the world. It's desperately needed. So we come home to that over and over and over again. We're going to be even more relentless than the mind in its attempts to impose ignorance on us, to veil that true vision with all its clouds of thoughts and misidentifications with one thing or another. We're going to be relentless with the awareness. I am that. I am Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya. I bow to Shiva in all its magnificence. I am Shiva. Om Kali Ma. Om Kali Ma. I bow to Kali in all her magnificence. I am Kali. We do the practices with that awareness. And that's what then takes us into that source. Just as in the quiet time in the afternoon when they shut all the temples down and all the other practices all became quiet. It's in the stillness, in the silence. That's where we come home to the absolute truth. We use the vehicles of practices, the vehicles of mantra, to take us there, and then rest in that sublime stillness. It's a poem from Kali's Bazaar. All sound arises out of silence and dissolves into silence. All thought arises out of silence and dissolves into silence. The universe arises out of silence and dissolves into silence. Suffering arises out of silence and dissolves into silence. The unbounded spaciousness of silence, filled with the clear light of awareness, dissolves the roots of pain and sorrow. So take refuge in silence and know unshakable joy, the truth of who you are in all your fullness, in all your glory. So we're going to be chanting now for a few minutes, and we're going to be chanting the mantras Om Namah Shivaya and Om Kali Ma. And so as you pick that sound up and pick up the sound of the chant and join in and can chant at home, silently, out loud, really loud, whatever you would like. Right? So just join in and ride the waves of the mantra. Because the mantra is a throb of that silence, that stillness, that has reached out into this concrete domain that we live in, so that we can take a hold of it and go back into that utter stillness and dissolve in that. Dissolve in the truth of who you are. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah. Shivaya Namah. Om Kalima. Om Kalima. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah. Shivaya Namah. Om Kalima. Om Kalima. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah. Shivaya Namah. Om Kalima. Om Kalima. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shivaya Namah. Shivaya Namah. Om Kalima. Om Kalima. Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Kalim Durga Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah Shivaya Namah Om Kalima Om Kalima Kalim Durga Namo Namah Kalim Durga Namo Namah. Letting go into that stillness, the silence of I am that. Hum and sa. The breath comes in with the sound hum, goes out with the sound sa. All day, all night, proclaiming the truth. I am that. I am the infinite, the boundless one. Hum, sa. Take refuge in that. Take refuge in the stillness of pure, spacious awareness, unmoved by whatever arises and subsides in that spacious awareness. Awareness untouched, unsullied, all-embracing. Tatwam masi. Thou art that. So we end with this prayer that may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. So coming back to that stillness, coming back to the awareness of I am that, the Hamsa, Soham awareness, the ground of our being. Even if the mind is active, we don't have to be identified with it. Even if it's fulfilling its responsibilities, that's our agent out there doing that. Your true nature is I am that. I am the infinite. I am the boundless one. And that one is free of suffering. That one is filled with love, compassion, kindness, and patience, and a steadiness of wisdom. By accessing that all the time, repeatedly, over and over, we walk that into the world. We bring that into our actions. We look around, we see the consequences of people acting out of their ignorance. That emptiness that ignorance creates, people become desperate to fill it. They can't sit in their own homes without having to go out and socialize and become contagious or get the virus. Just because we can't rest in some stillness, some quiet, and feel the fullness of that, the absolute fullness, wanting and lacking nothing. That's who you are. So bring yourself back to that awareness over and over, and help remind people that that is their nature. That's who they really are. Can bring that wisdom into the world and act with that fullness. Then we can transform everyday life. Keep coming home to that awareness. And we'll be here as often as we can on Thursday nights, helping to pass that on and help remind people, help support people in their own remembrance. All practices are practices of remembrance. Remembering the truth of who you are. Come home to that. And so with all my heart, with all my love, I thank you all for coming. You've brought your divine presence to this evening and to this group so that we can put out the highest into the world. And it's contagious as well. So keep putting out the highest. By your actions, by your thoughts, by your words, by mantra. Keep coming back to that. And next week is going to be a chanting night. So we'll be doing more chants, more mantras. And so everybody's welcome to join us for that. And I want to thank everyone for, all the ways that you've been helping support Anamkara and supporting me and doing the seva of making this available, through your sharing of our e-newsletter, sharing the YouTube video channel that we now have where we put the weekly satsang recordings up. Sharing those with other people makes a big difference, as well as your donations that really help us to support what we're trying to make available to everyone as freely as possible. And your donations are really what makes that possible. So I'm really thankful to everyone for that. So once again, with all my heart and with all my love, I thank you for joining us this evening, and I hope you'll be able to join us next week.